Uses TARP's extension and calls the program savings phony. Republican Senator Gregg of New Hampshire joins me now with his take on TARP. So, Senator, you released a statement. Great to see you as always, sir, Senator. And you released a statement yesterday. And I want to ask you about it, if you don't mind, real quick here. You said that you strongly opposed extending TARP, but you say that TARP, that this could be inappropriate or illegal if he extends TARP. I want to find out first what you meant by that, Senator.
Well, first off, there's two pools of money here to talk about. There's the money that's gone out the door and is now being paid back by Citigroup, for example, if they pay their money back. All that money that went out to banks, most of it's going to come back with interest. Taxpayers are going to make a little money. That money, under the terms of the TARP language, I know this because I wrote it, has to go to debt reduction when it comes back in. Now, there's another group of funds here alleged to exist. They do not exist, by the way, which you just had in your quip there from Secretary Geithner. The money that allegedly between $550 billion and the $700 billion that was authorized, there is no money there. There's no money in a cash draw somewhere at the Treasury, $150 billion. That money would have to be borrowed, just like you'd have to borrow it for anything else the government does, because the government doesn't have any money. And so when they use TARP in this way, or allege they're going to use it in this way for something other, let's say building roads or some sort of activity like that, they're basically saying they're going to go out and borrow another $150 billion from China and spend it on roads. Well, that wasn't the intention of TARP either, and more importantly, it's a fraud because there is no money there to use, and they're using TARP as a cover, a political cover for the purposes of borrowing money to do one of their new stimulus packages. We already know these stimulus packages are at the margin relative to how they work, and it would be totally inappropriate because our kids shouldn't end up with that bill. Our kids should not end up with more debt being put on their back for a stimulus package which is at the best on the margin of doing anything as we move out of this recession.
Well, then help me get clear on this, Senator Gregg, because you were part of the negotiating committee for the Economic Recovery Stabilization Act, which became TARP. So under that, can they legally take TARP money and pay down the debt or the deficit at all? Is that even legal?
That's exactly what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to take the money that comes in. They've got two things they can do with the money in TARP. One, they can use it to stabilize the financial industry when there's a systemic risk. Two, if they don't use it for that purpose, as the money comes in or when the program terminates, they have to use it to pay down the debt. That's what the law says. They have to use it to pay down the debt. What they're claiming is that because they have not drawn down $150 billion, they haven't borrowed this additional $150 billion from China yet, that they can take that new borrowing authority or that borrowing authority and use it for something else. Well, they can take any borrowing authority they want, but they can't use TARP money for something else. And it's totally inappropriate to allege that.
Well, we went back and looked at, under the original bill for TARP, we were looking at exactly what TARP was supposed to be used for, again, to buy troubled assets. And under this, it says, and this is a quote from the bill, any other financial instrument, this is what a troubled asset is, that the Secretary, after consultation with the Chairman of the Board of Governors with the Fed, determines the purchase of which is necessary to promote financial market stability, but only upon transmittal of such determination in writing to the appropriate committees of Congress. Did you get anything in writing, for instance, when we went to bail out General Motors and Chrysler?
Yes, which, my opinion, pushed the envelope to the furthest extreme of that language. But at that time, we received a communication that said that it was a systemic risk if GM went under, and they were able to hook GM in and Chrysler in because of their financing arms. But you certainly can't do that for building roads or the general purposes of the government. Even small business lending would be totally inappropriate under that language, and it would clearly be illegal. This money, we put this language in for very specific reasons. You know, the taxpayers lent this money to these banks, lent it. And we expected to get it back with interest, which we're going to do. But we had to borrow this money to get it. And we had to borrow this money from other countries, basically. And that bill's going to our kids. So when we did that, we said, listen, if we get this money back, let's not have this debt still on our book for our kids. Let's pay it down. And so that's why the language says that the money has to go to pay down the debt if it's not used to settle out a systemic fiscal risk.
You know, and that $150 billion, by the way, Senator, is stretched over a decade, and they're front-loading it right now to use for a jobs bank. I mean, let's be blunt. I mean, the only troubled asset we're talking about are the Democrats' own seats in Congress in the midterm election. So how do you square Treasury Secretary Geithner saying just now to Congress that they have choices on how to use this $150 billion, and with the President saying every penny of that will go back towards paying the deficit?
Well, because they're playing they're playing language games with the American public, spin games. They're trying to tie TARP into their stimulus package for political reasons, spin reasons, you know. The banks were bailed out, therefore Main Street America should get this money. But essentially, the same thing would happen under either approach, which would be that you would add to the debt by $150 billion, send that money out, and use it as walking around money for members of Congress who want to fund certain programs, most of those programs, the implementation of them will occur in the years 2013, 2014, 2015, long after we're well past this recession. We're already past the recession, but the pain is still there. But I mean, the simple fact is that this is not a good way to manage our fiscal house. We should not be adding massive increases in debt at all, and we certainly shouldn't be adding it and claiming in some extraordinarily tortured way that this is actually money that we have somewhere in some drawer when it doesn't even exist. It will still have to be borrowed.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then, Senator. You made your point clear that you disagree with the Treasury Secretary's decision to extend TARP. What are you going to do about it? Which plan?
Well, we certainly hope to be able to get a vote, but hopefully as we wrap up this session on terminating TARP. John Thune, Senator from South Dakota, has a bill to do exactly that. I think we should do it. I obviously was one of the authors of TARP. I think it did what it was supposed to do, which was settled out the financial industry and avoided a fiscal collapse, which probably would have led to a depression, as Chairman Bernanke said. But now that, you know, the purpose of the TARP is over, and we should terminate it. And I hope we can get a vote to do that. But right now we're being stonewalled by our colleagues on the other side of the aisle and the administration on getting such a vote.
Senator, we're definitely going to pick this story up with you again very soon. Senator Gregg from New Hampshire, it's always great to have you on the show,
Thank you,
Senator.
Sharon.
Love to see you in New York again.